Hi, I'm Jeff Cohn from Quest One Distributors. Today I'm going to make a video showing the three different types of heat shrinking for automotive back windows. The dry shrink, the wet shrink, and what I call a hybrid. I'm going to get into the pros and cons of each one, and I hope you enjoy it. In today's video, I wanted to show the different types of heat shrinking that may be limiting your overall shrinking capabilities. Have you ever ran out of shrink on a tough back window? Maybe today's demonstration and tips will help you. It is not always the film's shrinkability that is the issue. When wet shrinking film, you must use the H pattern that we've all come accustomed to. Keeping the defined fingers facing up and down is essential. Film only shrinks one way. I start on the outside corners where you usually run out of shrink. As you can see, the wet shrink concentrates a high amount of heat in defined areas. Shrinking defined fingers in the film limits the amount of the film's surface we are using to be shrunk. Wet shrinking is a relatively easy way to learn how to heat shrink. The defined finger shows us exactly what needs to be shrunk. It's kind of a roadmap to the end product. Also, when the film is completely shrunk, it is tight to the window and leaves no room for undershrinking. However, this process is much slower than other types of heat shrinking and could be an easier way to damage the film in the process. For example, creases, overshrinking, and running out of shrink in extremely curved windows is common with wet shrinking. Dry shrinking film is completely different than wet shrinking, besides the obvious wet versus dry. I personally do not use the H pattern setup because it limits the shrinking surface of the film. A simple light dusting of baby powder and a wet line across the middle of the glass is all I use to set up the shrink. A true dry shrink is my preferred method of shrinking film. It is quick and easy. This method does take more time to learn and understand what the film is doing, since there are no defined fingers, or roadmap, if you will. The baby powder is a dusting layer that allows the film to float on top of the glass. With a wet shrink or an H pattern, the techniques lock down portions of the film, which limits its shrinkability, whereas dry shrink does not. That being said, a true dry shrink is very easy on the film since you are using the entire surface of the film, which maximizes the film's shrinkability. On those hard to shrink windows, this type of shrinking may be your best bet. Again, I start on the outside and work my way towards the middle. I concentrate on the most curvy parts of the glass first so that I never run out of shrink. Once the hard parts are done, the rest is easy. This process is great because it is hard to crease the film, it is a quick shrink, and it does not harm the film in any way. The downfalls of this type of shrinking is that it is harder to learn, plus you need to rinse your film really well before installing it. Residual baby powder can contaminate the film if you are not careful. Hybrid shrinking. Wet a dryer sheet and rub the glass down and leave a soapy residue and let dry. Once the residue is dry, apply a line of water across the glass. Many of you consider dryer sheets as a dry shrink. However, I call it a hybrid. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. 1. When shrinking, it lays down like a wet shrink. And 2. There tends to be some defined fingers when shrinking. It is the perfect combination of the two types of shrinking we've already covered. I do like this type of shrinking for a few reasons, but I still think the H pattern is limiting your shrinkability. I see no reason to lock down the sides of the film. That is limiting your shrink area in the most important areas that need to be shrunk. Try just a simple line across the film and concentrate on shrinking the corners first. Work your way into the middle where your windows are less curvy and need less shrinking. If you're running out of shrink with your current products you are using, this may help. For example, many ceramic films are harder to shrink than, say, an NR film, but being able to use every inch of the film surface is an advantage to you. I really like this form of heat shrinking. It is good on the film and it is easier to teach new installers. This type of shrinking provides the roadmap that dry shrinking does not. This takes a little longer to set up, but the shrink itself is really easy. In this final demonstration, I wanted to show the dry shrink and the hybrid shrink together. As you can see, I've set up the bottom for the hybrid shrink, and the top I'm going to do the dry shrink. Notice that the hybrid shrink is a lot like a wet shrink. Now you will see that the dry shrink is more free-floating. In closing, I would like to say that there is no wrong way to tint a window as long as it is clean and professional. The comments in this video are no more than my opinions. After 33 years in the industry, I have encountered every issue, and as professional installers, it is our jobs to overcome those issues. My goal with these videos is to use my experiences in the window film industry and pass them on to the newer generations. Remember, we can all learn from each other.